All right, guys. So my last video, I was talking about all the doom and gloom in the Magic market right now, and while I do think we are not at the bottom yet, I still remain firm that things are going to get worse from where we're at today, especially with the vintage market and some of the more poorly received product. But overall, things are not going to be great. But in full transparency, and after reading some of the comments, I do agree that there are some things out there that are doing actually pretty well, or at least holding their own. And when you're in a down market, if something's holding steady, that's a pretty strong signal of something good. So let's just get right into it. The first one on my list, and probably one of my favorite ones, is the Throne of Eldraine set. It's a set that doesn't have a set booster, and I think that that might actually have something to do with its success. But it's one of the only times you're going to see, I think, even on this video, of something actually going up in the last 3 months, which is pretty impressive. And I always like to take a look at the sales, because if something's doing really, really well or has a really good price, but you look at it and there's like a sale a month or less or something like that, it doesn't mean as much to me. So this, people are actually buying it, which is interesting. And even the collector boosters, they're doing pretty darn well too. So just like I said, keep in mind that that's one of the few sets that doesn't have a set booster. Um, Phyrexia is not going up, but it's kind of holding its own. I mean, it spiked a little bit, but I mean that's like a $10 spike, so whatever. But the fact that it's actually a new set that's not going down, you gotta look at what's going on in there. I mean, there's a lot of cool cards that people are chasing. It's a really powerful set. I mean, poison counters are, depending on if you love them or hate them, there's a lot of good cards in there. And the artwork in it, and some of all the special treatments and all of that. It's not just the set boosters. Pretty much everything from that expansion is doing pretty good. The one that I just love Kaldheim. I find an excuse to try and bring it up, but it's not doing, it's not rocketing. It's not really going up too much, but it's not going down. 3 months it's up, but yeah, actually, wow, actually, I take that back, dude.
Scroll back. That's not
Six.
to go to the
Oh,
booster box.
it's the bundle. What am I
Yeah, I
doing?
mean, bundle's looking nice.
The bundle is looking pretty
But
nice.
overall, it's steady.
Yeah, overall, it's done all right, which I think is important in this kind of market. And one of my favorite newer sets, Kamigawa, has done. It's
That's
done pretty well.
that's the set box.
Set, I know,
Yeah.
but see the set box. I just want to take a comparison here. So take a look at the set box. Let's see if I can find. There we go. See, I just don't find it weird.
It looks good. It's just a good set. That's
I've also noticed that draft boxes seem to be doing better than set boxes.
Yeah.
And you would think, if you're just going off of pool rates, that set boxes would be the better deal, which is, I feel like that's undeniably true.
Yeah.
But I have noticed in a number of these boxes, maybe not all the ones we'll go over, but I have noticed that draft boxes are doing better than set boxes in a lot. And I did talk about Jumpstart in the last video, and actually being one of the reasons that I'm kind of not. I don't think Jumpstart is a bad idea, but them doing it as often as they did has just killed all the hype for it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
When it came out,
Burned out faster than anything.
when it came out, and this box here is first Jumpstart,
$150.
this thing was awesome, and it was actually a lot of fun to play, and it was just a really super cool idea. And when the next ones came out, I forget what the next one was, but
The 2022 one, but
it just
it's
it was
with individual sets now.
yeah, which just kills what I feel like Jumpstart was supposed to be for. But this original one, it hasn't done too bad. Obviously, it's fallen from its all-time high. Like
It wasn't printed enough. Let's be honest.
yeah, I mean, this was one of the sets that came out when the printing nightmare and Target was raided as soon as it opened up, and everyone was slinging cards. But Zendikar, Zendikar Rising,
I
not
think
the
it's a
original.
dark horse. Still think it's a dark horse.
It really is. It really is, isn't it? Well, it has the it has the Expedition Lands topper on it.
Mhm.
But it was also a set that, like, when it came out, it was not as fun as like Ikora,
Yeah.
and it had, I mean, Scoot Swarm.
The most ridiculous card ever, dude.
I that was actually, this set right here was actually what kind of killed Standard for me.
Yep.
But you look back with things, and I hated this. Like, you asked Chris, loved Ikora. We played a lot of Ikora at stores. Played Zendikar, hated it. Hated it. Hated the cards they introduced, hated the meta that came along with it, just hated everything about it. But if you come to me now and ask me how I feel about Zendikar Rising, I think it's actually a great set. And that's a really good point. And people like Rudy talk about it all the time, is like, time has that funny way of working where things don't, that seem crappy back in the day or just seem par, they look a lot better further down the line. And the fact that Zendikar Rising has actually just at least held on, because 3 years ago, I would have said this is one of the weakest sets of Magic. But when I look back on it, for how long it's been and when everything that's come out before that, it's a much better set looking back on it.
What's
So
the collector box going for?
That's a good question.
220, like solid. You always solid.
They're actually faring a little bit better if you're just going purely off the graph. And I mean, people are buying them. Not every day. 918, 912, 95, at least once a week.
And then they went up to 265.
But there's probably not a lot of Zendikar Rising collector boxes. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but some of all these like collector boxes we're gonna go over for some of this stuff, there's probably not a lot of left. And the one that I talked about a lot, the Granddaddy. This was, I think that when we talk about dark horses, I think Kamigawa is actually a true dark horse. And
this one's just good. We know
and what I mean by that is, like, Ikora was probably the last great set of that era of Magic. Like, I feel like the era of Magic, even all the way back from like Ixalan, Dominaria, moving all the way forward, I feel like Ikora was the last piece of that era. And I don't think that was because of COVID. I think it was, and this even had the Godzilla, Universes Beyond. It was like before the big push for that.
Had the champions or had the companions, the greatest.
But it felt so crazy.
The greatest mistake in Magic's history was from this set.
Pretty much. I mean, Universes Beyond has, in my opinion, done a horrible job for the game as a whole. I mean, people like the individual things. I'm guilty of liking some of the individual things. But I think as a whole, it just wasn't good for it. But Ikora was one of the most fun sets to draft. Easily.
They did a great job.
And the collector boxes, see, this is when all this stuff was still newer. Like, collector boxes weren't beaten to the ground yet and things like that. And so it was really, really cool to open these. These ones are actually going down.
Might be a purchase in the future.
But there's actually, believe it or not, there's more sales for Ikora than Zendikar and the even Kamigawa, I'm pretty sure.
I think just like the way they did Godzilla with it. And
it was cool, and it felt...
and not special, unique ability.
No, and it felt special. Like, it felt really cool that Godzilla was in Magic the Gathering. And Godzilla kind of works, because, I mean, he's about monster. Yeah, so he kind of fits, he fits in with some of that, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, I don't know, it was still new. The idea of mixing stuff up was still new. I wanted to jump to some of the older sets, because one of the other things too is, I like to say, you look through things, don't look right at the edge of your nose. Go out and do the distance a little bit, think a little bit further down the line. And so I wanted to pull a couple boxes for things that were much older, because I think it's interesting. It's not just vintage stuff going down. It's not just modern stuff going down. It's not just new stuff going down. It's a little bit of everything, or a lot of bit of everything is going down, and some things are going up. And Ixalan was a good set. I mean, I think this was like right before we started buying a bunch of booster boxes, so I don't think we really opened like boxes of Ixalan. I think we maybe opened like one box.
Yeah,
but
we bought some packs.
But this was like still back in the card store getting a whole bunch of packs.
$89 for the cheap. It was like the OG booster box prices were about $89, $85.
What's interesting, like Clerk just said, It was 85, $90 when it came out. It's all the way up to 150, and it's dropped. So it's around 170 a year ago, and it's dropped. And it's actually dropped more recently, more in the last 90 days than it has in the last year. Um, but
They reprinted some dinos.
and that'll do it. That'll do it.
We haven't
But
even
the
talked about that.
but this stuff is still relatively holding its value, and if you bought it 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you'd be up right now on your
70%.
purchase. So, and yeah, and not a small amount. And I think it's important when you're looking at some of this newer stuff that's going down and everything just seems kind of bleak, that you do remember that like this is a moment of time, and you can go back and look at something that was from a way further period of time, and in that time you can see how it performs. And especially like the vintage stuff that has it's actually been through like every economic downturn and all this and that, because all that stuff's important too. um, I do think that looking at our devastation, kind of the same thing, it's actually doing pretty good.
It had
It's
the masterpieces in it.
Yeah, see, and that's what I'm getting to, is like you have to look at these things that are doing well and see why they're doing well, because as a whole, and in my last video I was talking to, I think the economy plays a huge part in all of this stuff happening, but at the same time it's not just Bidenomics and inflation and all of this that's hurting this. I mean, that's just a portion, and the only portion that really affects is it affects people's discretionary income. Some people in the last comments are saying, the economy doesn't really matter. It does, because it matters, because if you have high inflation and you have people afraid to get into the market, or people getting laid off from their jobs,
They don't like spendable money.
they don't like spending money. And when you're cutting things off your budget, if you're a sane human being, and I understand that a lot of people are not these day and age, but most people, they're going to write off freaking Magic the Gathering. They're going to write off their
Movies,
xCloud
video
subscription. They're going to write these things off that are easy to get rid of and chill out for a couple months. So I definitely think we're seeing that. Um, but but at the same time, that is a small portion, because there's also a lot of people who are doing well. Um, I think the main reason that Magic is suffering, not the economy, it is WotC. And I can continue to play devil's advocate and say it's not WotC, it's Hasbro, but they're one and the same as long as they're together, in my opinion. And WotC Hasbro is just sucking the life out of the game. They're driving a lot of people to buy a lot of product, and people are slowing down. Some product is getting bought. You look at Lord of the Rings, everyone showed up for it. You look at like Brothers War, nobody showed up for it. So people, the whole don't buy sets you're not interested thing, people are doing that. And I think that you add that to an uncertain economy, you add in a whole bunch of frustrated players, and you get this. Because if you look at Flesh and Blood, and I'm not going to go on a Flesh and Blood tangent, it's just a matter of fact, it doesn't matter what your opinion on the game is, but if you look at Flesh and Blood, it's not doing bad. A lot of the sets, Uprising, not the newest one, but
Honestly, all of them are
yeah,
just like
they're going up. They're either going up or they're steady, and they're certifiably done dropping. I mean, Monarch just crashed forever, and it's actually been rising ever so
biggest crash
slowly.
in TCG history,
Yeah,
somebody
maybe
said.
the biggest crash in TCG history for a single overhyped product that stood no chance to live up to its hype. But the point I'm making is that, and I don't have as much experience with Yu-Gi-Oh! I have heard from some people that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not doing as well either, but not as bad as Magic. So I, I I think it's an event that is not isolated to Magic, and not unique to Magic, but is highly exasperated by WotC. And the only way for them to fix that is to do better. And they are a really big company, and it takes a long time. They can't just turn on a dime. This set doesn't work, so the next set we have to make all these changes. I mean, these sets are printed, done, developed, everything, not necessarily in that order. Hopefully, sometimes it feels that way, but they're done so far in advance that it does take time. So I think they can adjust. They've done it in the past. People who've been around longer, there have been other dark ages in Magic. There's been other economic downturns. I mean, 2008 was not a good time, and it's not really a good time for Magic either. I honestly can't even think of the sets off.
2012 something happened. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure in like the 2000s. Like there's always something going on.
But it's also not isolated to new product or product that's not on the reserve list. I get that a lot from a lot of the collectors who have a lot of skin in the game, and I mean, we have a lot of reserve lists too. Full disclosure, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's some kind of safe haven to invest in. If you look, pretty much any of the dual lands are down on the last 6 months.
Crazy.
Or really, I mean, almost more than almost half a year.
Recently.
These cards going down, and some of them are going up, and it kind of proves my point that I think as the whole the market's going down, but there's individual things that are going up because they either have a use or they have some kind of extra value. So the sets that don't have a set booster, or the sets that have masterpieces like original masterpieces, or sets that were serialized or special with like Ikoras, like you notice these sets that are doing well, and it's in these times when everything else is doing bad. Spend the extra time to figure out why they're doing better, because they're weathering the storm. And again, I'm not going to give advice, but if you're still a committed player, if you're playing the game to have fun, now's one of the best times to buy pretty much anything you want, because it's more affordable than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. So if there's boxes that you want to get and open up, like, don't be afraid. Don't think you're going to save more money by waiting a little bit longer. I mean, you look at a year period, things have dropped crazy. If you look at a 5-year period, they've gone up crazy. And if you look in this 1 year that we've had post, or I guess 2 years really,
Yeah.
but I mean, 2020, 2021, we had the craziest growth ever, and we thought it was just free money forever, and it was just crazy. And now it's reality check. But eventually it's going to go back to that again. So again, I can't tell you what to buy, but
Just keep an eye open.
just keep an eye open. Have fun with the game. That's really what it's for. And to the people who said that the game's also for collectors, well, don't try and time the bottom, because Warren Buffett never did, and it's worked out probably a lot better for him than it will for almost anybody. So, I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me if there's any other sets or individual cards or whatever. Tell me if you find anything that you find has done really well in the last year, because I'm really interested to find other people who found some things that are doing really well. We usually stick to sealed product, not so much as singles. So if you have any single cards that have gone up crazy or something, let us know. Remember, 500 subs you guys are going to give away. I don't think I have them here, but we're going to give away probably a box worth of packs of Double Masters 2022. So hopefully they're not down to 0 by the time we actually get to 500 subs. So see you guys.